So I have a lot of videos about all the negative things people say and misinformed things people say and correcting all of that. But I figured I should do a video where I talk about all the positive stuff people say, because there's actually a lot of compliments we get. There's a lot of positive attention that our horses get, and a lot of people in the horse world that do know our horses are treated well. I'm just gonna give you an example. Yesterday I was driving my horse an empty loop through the park just because I was gonna take a different route home, and I was probably about a half hour, and over that half hour we got between 3 and 5 compliments. I sometimes confuse like what's happening what day, but there was like someone who was like, "That is the most beautiful horse I have ever seen." Someone else was like, "That is a good looking horse." There was one weird one where they were like, "I love your hair and your horse. Both are beautiful, and your horse's hair." And it was like, okay, thank you. They were going by like really fast on a bike. So we do get a lot of compliments, especially Scout here. For some reason, he's like got this kind of unique look to him, I guess. He is like very stocky and strong, and he's got a lot of muscle on his chest and shoulder, but he's not tall like a bigger horse. He's only 15 hands. And my other horse is as well, and he's got this squished up face, kind of like a teddy bear would be. Like if you had a stuffed animal horse version, he's like this compressed version of a horse. So his nostrils are not as elongated as some horses, and his face isn't as elongated. It's kind of smushed together, so it makes him look cuter, although he's like big and strong. So I think it's just this unique look people go for, and he's got, you know, pretty coloring on him. They like the blonde hair for some reason. So I think that's part of the reason he gets so many compliments. Nick gets a lot of compliments too, but Scout just kind of gets extra ones. Now, when I first started working with my other horse, Nick, it's not like, you know, I chose him. I was looking for a shift, and there was one available, and he was a relatively new horse to the industry. And they're like, okay, I need a night shift driver a couple days a week. Eventually I worked my way up to full time, and then 2 day shifts. And they're like, all right, here's the horse. And so I just kind of like, all right, brown horse kind of thing. Like, but over time, as I worked with him over a lot of years, over 8 years now, we really developed a bond, and I taught him so many little tricks and things, and he really, you know, grew. I grew on him and he grew on me, kind of thing. And now I do think, you know, he's like really great. I actually have a tattoo of him I showed in another video. So he's kind of like, he's not really my first, I guess he's like my first horse basically, and no matter what's on the paperwork, he will always be my horse. I'm like the only one caring for him and driving him, except for a couple of my days off. I've got some drivers working with him, so Nick is definitely mine. But it wasn't like I named him or picked him out or anything, and that's what's different about Scout. So we had 2 horses that we worked with, and there was the other horse, Jessie, was a Morgan cross, and she was just very high energy, and it wasn't my preference in a horse. I could handle driving her, but I didn't enjoy it. And so I wanted another horse that I enjoyed driving. A lot of people in this business like driving standardbred horses. They're typically a lot faster, but that's not my preference. I like a draft horse who's not necessarily tall, but just bigger and just calm and slow, and that's just my kind of horse. And I was just kind of scrolling on Facebook, and I saw this ad for Scout here, and the ad made him sound perfect. And I know on the internet, like, you know, a horse seller is going to make every horse sound perfect, even when they're not. But this was actually through Draft Horse Placement, I believe they're called on Facebook. They have a page. There's a lot of pages that actually copy them. Don't fall for the scam ones if you go looking for a horse. But I do, you know, give them a lot of props. It was a very easy sale. They were very honest. They like know what they're talking about and everything. They were nice. It was, you know, I recommend, you know, using them if they fit what you're looking for. But just, again, there are like all these like copies of their page are not real. They do not, like, you know, I'm not paid to promote them or anything. I just kind of had a good experience with them. But they were originally located in, I think it was called Thurmont, Maryland, but they are now in Somerset, Pennsylvania, which is a lot further of a drive. But they are out there and still selling horses as far as I know. I don't know all of Scout's history When I purchased him, he was 7 years old, so he's 9 now. I had that confirmed by veterinarian. He came without shoes. He's a little new to the shoeing process, but they were like totally like straightforward about all that. And he's just been great. They had said that he gets a lot of looks, a lot of compliments, and he does. And we get a lot chosen for rides a lot of the times. People are really drawn to him. He's got a mini fan club of a couple of locals that stop by almost every day to see him. And he's really the first horse that I bought with my own money. I actually paid about double what most people in this industry will pay for a horse for him, because I just had a feeling about him and he was exactly what I was looking for. And the first thing that attracted to me about him was that his height. He is actually, like I said, 15'2" hands, so he is not tall, and I'm not tall. I'm 5'2", so it was this perfect, like, where I can actually reach the top of his withers to clean him or get to his check line, and it's not like you know, a larger draft that it's more difficult for me to get up there, but he is large in every other way, and it was so perfect. He's also the first horse that I've trained in the city. I mean, trained is a relative term because they all come from a pulling background, but basically got adapted to be comfortable in the city and, you know, all of that. I did a little bit of that with Nick, but it wasn't like from the very beginning, where I was with this horse from day one. Aside from maybe 3, 4, 5 days ever in his 2 years here, I've been the only person to drive him. So whether he's trained for good or bad, that was all us, like, learning together. And I really like how he turned out. I actually got a lot of offers for him from other drivers, some even more than I'd paid for him, but he is not for sale. So I paid what I wanted just to have him. And one time, actually, I was driving Nick back to the stable, and this car pulled up next to us. And he was asking me how much to buy the horse. And I'm like, no, he's not for sale. You know, I'm not selling him. And we keep kind of going back and forth at the red light. And they actually looked like people that did really have money. And the guy's like, you know, no, how much? And I was like, I wouldn't sell him for like $1 million. That's what I was thinking, because I just didn't know how to get rid of this guy. So I told him that the horse was $1 million, not thinking like, you know, he would think anything of it. And then he was just like looking at his partner in the car, like, you know, considering it. And I was just like, wait a second, what if he's actually like, I'm making a deal without realizing it. Now I have to sell my horse for $1 million. I was like, my point was that I wouldn't sell him for $1 million. So when I saw them like kind of seriously considering it, I was just like, oh, like I better get out of here. And I saw the light was going to change green, so I just left. And when I was telling the owner of the Carriage about it, who technically owns my horse, Nick, he's just like, no, you should take it $1 million, because he doesn't have to bond with my horse. He doesn't know. He had his own horse. He had Jesse. And so I did not sell the horse, but he was kind of disappointed. And then I think the guys were just kind of like, wow, this is $1 million horse. Like, that's a good horse. But it's just what his value is to me. You know, it's a personal connection I had with him. So I also now have a personal connection with Scout here as well. And while I was trying to do this video, someone was actually just petting him now, and I'm like, why is this guy coming into my video right now? Usually you should always ask someone before you pet their horse, but I guess he made a good guess that I would have let him. So anyway, when I went to buy Scout, that was actually like one of my first big long trips that I did by myself driving a car, because in New York City, you've probably heard a lot of the time, we don't learn to drive a lot of the time because we've got subways and buses and it's just like not really necessary. And it's expensive to have a car here. But through some special circumstances, I do own a car, and I don't really have the budget for it, but I do, and it just kind of worked out that way for me. I've got a couple of special situations where I'm not paying too much to park it or anything like that, so I'm able to have it. Very lucky to have it. Bought it at a good price through a friend, no interest and all of that. It's a longer version to that story, don't worry about that one. But anyway, that's the short version. So I do have a car, and basically what happened was I learned enough to pass a road test. Road test driving here is very different from real life driving. Like, you don't go on a highway or anything like that. There's just a few basic things you need to know, that you need to show you know how to do. You will automatically lose if you, or fail the test if you go like even 1 mile per hour over the speed limit. It's very strict, and that actually made me fearful to go 1 mile 1 mile an hour over the speed limit for a long time. So then over the pandemic in 2020, I actually had a friend that lived nearby, and he came out and gave me like real life driving lessons for a couple months, and it worked, and I can drive. So the very first thing I did as driving by myself on a long trip was drive up to see my horse that was vacationing on the pastures. That was Nick. That was in 2020, 5 years ago, and I went to see Nick. And that was pretty cool because I missed him because I was here in the city and he was upstate, about an hour and a half or so from here, maybe 2 hours from me. So that was that. And then with Scout here, I saw the ad and I was like, I guess I've got to drive to Maryland now, about 4 or 5 hours away, to see him. So I drove to the city and picked up another Carriage driver who was going to come check him out with me. And we did the drive out there and saw him, and I bought him, and I drove back. It was like 12 to 15 hours driving that day, I think, for me or something, there and back. A few days later, I had him trailered to the stable, and it all worked out. So there are usually people that know how to drive a car before a horse. You do need a car driving license to drive a horse here in the city and get your license, but they don't check, how often you actually drive your car. So I was licensed to drive, but I wasn't really experienced with it. And all of my street driving came from driving a horse first, and I was much more comfortable doing that in the beginning. I do have that sticker on my car that says I'd rather be driving my draft horse, because I would. But I do make a lot of use out of that car. I'm able to see my boyfriend in New Jersey and all that, and I drive to work every day and can bring equipment to work and all of that, so it has been a good thing for me. Driving in New York City is a lot different than driving in other states. It takes kind of a combination of being patient and a little bit aggressive, and you have to have the right balance. I think I am actually a very good driver because I drove a horse first, and I wish everyone had to drive a horse first, because no one knows how to drive their car around a horse, and no one has the right patience. And when you drive a horse for so long, it's a good skill set to develop before you start driving a car. Of course, I doubt I'm going to get my wish, but that isn't the experience I had learning to drive. And now I drive horses and a car, and it's all working out very nice. And the way I drive my car is actually a lot like I drive my horse, because I'm always looking out for what's coming up ahead and looking for any little potholes in the road and things, because those can be a much bigger deal for a horse. If they trip and fall in a pothole, or the carriage hits something and breaks, that can lead to an accident. So you have to be really careful about where you're putting your horse. You don't want them injured. You don't want your carriage damaged. You don't want your carriage damage causing an accident with your horse. So you have to be really careful. I will be taking, the West Side Highway up to the stable. And if I know that there's a cruise ship, I look for a cruise ship out by the water, and I'm like, all right, there's a cruise ship there, which means when I get near 48th Street, there's going to be a lot of taxis double parked, which means that I can't be in the right lane where I want to be to make my turn coming up a couple blocks down. I've got to be either in the second or third lane. And like all this calculating goes through my head driving my car, so that I know that I don't have to keep changing lanes, and that, I'm not going to get delayed. And that's the kind of thing you do when you're driving a horse in a city, especially a city like New York City. You're always calculating blocks and blocks ahead of time, always aware of everything around you, and it's really a good skill set to have, and it makes you a better, safer driver, whether you're with a horse or with a car. And I just kind of noticed that's the way I do that, so I thought maybe that's interesting to some of you. I had to switch to the tiny hat because although it's nice, I don't have to work when it's too hot, because our horses are not allowed to. We don't work when it is above 89 degrees or 80 degrees with high humidity. I still get a little warm out here. So I use this tiny little hat when the summer comes. Anyway, Scout came with his name, but I kept it because I felt like it suited him. I looked up the meaning and origin of the name, and it had origins about meaning to listen, and he's a really good listener. And of course, when you scout out an area, to go, explore and everything, and he's a really curious, smart horse. And whatever I ask of him, whenever we communicate with each other, he's really good at communicating with me. So he's a good listener, and I was like, that's the perfect name for him. So I kept it. A lot of people like it, and that's how that name came to be.